The Wichita City Council recently gave final approval to the Good Sports Fieldhouse and the related K96 Greenwich Star Bond project. We have our Urban Development Director, Alan Bell, here to tell us more about it. Alan, thanks for being here.
Sure, glad to be here.
Well, first, just tell us a little bit about this project.
Okay, well, this is a project we've been working on now for almost 2 years. The project began with developers approaching the city, looking for assistance in developing a major commercial entertainment and tourism project in northeast Wichita in the area of Greenwich Road and K96. The project is centered around the concept of a youth sports facility called the Wichita Good Sports Fieldhouse. This will house and provide a venue for youth teams from throughout this region, multi-state region. We calculate up to 10 or 12 states will send teams of kids playing basketball, volleyball, wrestling, any kind of indoor sports to competitions, tournaments held in Wichita. This will bring not only the kids and the teams, but also their families, their coaches, their relatives will come, and this will provide a real tourism boost to the city of Wichita.
I was going to say, between all the restaurants and the hotels,
That's right.
A huge economic development impact.
Right. Any of us that have had kids that have grown up playing team sports know how those kids travel, and when they travel, they have an entourage, and as the parents, you spend a good deal of money on those trips. So it's
sure.
an economic boon.
Well, I know that this project didn't happen overnight, as you mentioned. Will you talk a little bit about all the approvals it took
Sure.
today and the support of the council?
Okay. Well, the first step in the process was to establish a district, a zone, in which the project would be located and in which the revenues that the city would be using to help pay for the project would be generated. This would be called the Star Bond District, and it was established by the City Council in 2012. I believe it was in March of 2012. Then in the beginning of 2013, January, the City Council also approved a detailed project plan that spelled out all of the elements of the project and who was going to do what and who'd be responsible for paying for what parts of the project. Then that had to be approved by the state of Kansas, because Star Bond financing comes not only from local sales tax but also from state sales tax. So the state has a stake in this and a role in approving the project. The state approved the project in June. In September, the City Council then approved a development agreement that locked in all the elements, of binding legal agreement. And then just recently, last week, the City Council took the final step in the process, which was the approval of the actual bond documents for the issuance of star bonds for the financing of the public financing portion of the project.
And I'm sure there are people out there who, like me originally, hadn't heard of star bonds before and didn't really know what that meant. Will you explain that? Okay,
star bonds are, as the name implies, are bonds that the city can issue to raise money out in the capital markets, bonds sold to investors, and these the money paid for the bonds then can be used to pay for a variety of prescribed improvements, activities that are authorized by state law. The word STAR is an acronym. It stands for Sales Tax Revenue. So these are sales tax revenue bonds. The bonds are repaid not from general city taxes, certainly not from property taxes. It's not like TIF where there's property taxes involved. They're paid solely by state and local sales taxes that are generated as a result of the developments that are being done. So in the Star Bond District, in the area of K96 and Greenwich Road, there will be a number of new commercial developments that will go in. The first of which was Cabela's. This project was started before Cabela's was developed, so we're able to capture the Cabela's sales tax revenue. And then other developments have already occurred in that area since then, and many more are planned. And these will all generate new sales tax dollars, and those new sales tax revenues can be used to pay the star bonds.
And talk a little bit more about the advantages of that.
Well, the STAR bonds then can be used to pay for a variety of things, and including the acquisition of real estate. So that's one of the things that the STAR bonds will be used for, purchasing land that the field house and the other elements of the project will be built upon. They also can be used for public infrastructure. For the City of Wichita, that means the completion of the K-96 and Greenwich interchange.
Which is huge.
Yeah, that's huge. That's the interchange that was built back in the late 80s, early 90s. But when it was built, they only built half an interchange. You can get off if you're coming from the west, and you can get back on heading west. But if you're coming from the east or want to go east at that interchange, you simply can't. That limits the utility of that interchange and the ability for Wichitans to take advantage of the developments in that area. So the city will use STAR bond revenues, some of the STAR bond revenues, to pay for part of the cost of completing that interchange. Then there's also infrastructure relating to the projects, interior roads, utility extensions, drainage improvements, those kinds of things that can also be paid for. And the one private kind of development that is allowed by state law and will be used in this project is the construction of the field house itself, to be paid for by STAR bonds.
If we didn't have the approval from the council to use STAR bonds, do you think this project would have come to fruition?
No, I'm certain it would not have. No, this is a project that private developers are making a massive investment in this project, and in the area of $70 or $80 million for all of the construction of new stores and amenities that will be built in the area, including hotels and restaurants and that sort of thing. So in order for them to be able to make that kind of investment and get the return necessary to make it a worthwhile commercial project, they needed the assistance from the STAR bonds to put in the infrastructure, and especially the completion of the interchange. Without that full service interchange, that area doesn't really have the economic viability that it needs.
Definitely a critical component.
Right.
You mentioned some other developments that will be coming up around that area. Are you at liberty to say what they are?
No, not really am. I mean, there's some that I know of, some that are that I don't even know enough about to be able to identify. But at this stage, businesses that are in negotiations, site for leases and sites and that sort of thing, are not anxious to have that kind of information made public.
All right, had to ask.
Sure, you did. That's the reporter in you.
That's right. Well, I bet you can tell us, though, the timeline, though, for when we'll start seeing things.
Yeah, actually, it's coming up pretty fast. Now that we've got the STAR bonds sold, the bonds are being sold to a institutional investor based in Dallas. That's actually an international company because it's a wholly owned subsidiary of a Japanese investment company. So we've gone international in this project. The schedule for the development is we'll start the work on the interchange. That'll be the first thing that needs to get started in not later than March of next year. Plans are already being or the design work is underway, and construction bids will be let later this year. And so construction work should begin in March, not later than March of next year, be completed before the end of 2014 or early in 2015 at the latest. In the meantime, the developers will start work on the site improvements, including the interior roads and the utilities, things that I mentioned before, and that work will start in June or in the spring if they can get into the ground, if they've got everything ready. They'll start work on the infrastructure, and then the field house itself, because it's tucked back into the sort of the east side of that development site. It needs to have the access roads put in so that they can get the construction workers back there. It'll start in not later than January of 2015, and be completed by March of 2016.
Well, that's exciting. Couple
Yeah.
years, we'll have
That's
a
right.
whole new fun place to
Yeah.
visit and watch games.
Right. So
And
just in time for the summer schedule of tournaments that they're planning to hold in 2016.
if people want to learn more about this project, where should they go?
Well, they can obviously contact me in my office, and we'd be glad to answer any questions, and we can also put them in touch with the developers. If they're businesses that are interested in locating a restaurant or a shop or retail business in this area, then I would direct them to the Wichita destination developers that are involved in that aspect of it. If they're interested in what's going on with the field house, I'd be able to put them in touch with the operating people at Good Sports Enterprises.
All right. Well, Alan, thanks so much for being here. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, that's all. I think this will be a great project for Wichita in general. The state of Kansas has recognized that not only will this boost the fortunes of the city of Wichita and our economy, but also the entire state, because we'll be attracting people from outside of the state into Wichita.
Huge win for us.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alan.
You bet.
And thank you for watching the show. We'll leave you with the contact information that Alan just mentioned.